I'm heading out to the San Fernando Valley today for part 3 on my look at the valley, checking out things from my childhood and remembering what the valley was like in the 1980s and 90s. Let's go see what we can find. Cruising along Ventura Boulevard right now. All right, coming up on my left, this car wash here. This has been here forever. Bit of a roadside attraction. However, that sign used to be a lot taller. After being there for years and years and years, the people in the community decided they didn't like it anymore. They thought it was an eyesore. They were able to keep the sign, but the city said that the sign was too tall and they had to cut it down and make it shorter. This is Van Nuys Boulevard and Ventura Boulevard. And right there used to be a little tattoo shop called Body and Soul. I used to hang out at that shop a lot. It was actually where I got my very first tattoo. You remember, Britney Spears had a meltdown, shaved off all her hair right after she went to Body and Soul and got a tattoo on her wrist. This Urban Outfitters used to be Tower Records. Across the street from the tattoo shop and Tower Records, this used to be a little punk rock record store called Green Hell. It was originally in Hollywood and then it moved here to Ventura Boulevard. I hung out at this shop a lot in the 90s. It was a cool little punk rock record store. This Goodwill right here used to be Guitar Center. This is actually where my parents bought me my first couple of guitar amps. Ventura and Sepulveda, this is the Sherman Oaks Galleria. This was an awesome mall in the 80s and 90s. You've seen it in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Commando, and a bunch of other movies. They tore them all down in the late 90s and said they were going to build something bigger and better, but basically all they built was a bunch of office spaces, a movie theater, and a couple of restaurants, and that's it. This building right here in front was Tower Records. I used to come to this tower a lot, but basically after Tower Records shut down, that was the last time I ever came to the Sherman Oaks Galleria. Ventura and Havenhurst, right down there is the Jackson's house. Supposedly they used to walk to this Gelson's to buy candy and whatnot. There it is, that's the Jackson's place. This restaurant on my right, Piquito Moss, great Mexican food. My family always stops here when we're in the valley. Floyd's Barbershop, I'm not really a fan of this place, but they do have really cool murals, and I think their Encino location has the best mural of all. The only thing is the referee, I'm not sure. He kind of looks like Mac from Mac and Me. Right across the street, this market used to be Blockbuster Video when I was a kid. Used to go there a lot to rent videos. I actually remember being in there one night and the only people in the store besides the employees were me, my dad, and David Crosby. True story. Black Bear Diner, this used to be Bob's Big Boy. That was definitely a favorite of my family growing up. Valley Baseball Cards. This is where we used to come to get all of our baseball cards and Garbage Pail Kids. The shop changed owners in 2008 and had a slight name change to Valley Sports Cards, but it's still the same shop. And right across the street right there, in the 90s, that was a snowboard/skateboard shop called Green Sector. Only went there a few times, wasn't a very good shop. This is Corbin Bowl on Ventura and Corbin. Cool little bowling alley with an old school sign. They had just recently started doing punk rock shows here before the bowling alley had to temporarily shut down. All right, so this is kind of crazy. I don't know how I lived in the valley all these years and I never noticed this building across the street until a couple of years ago when my buddy pointed it out to me. This is Fleetwood Square, built in 1986. It was designed to look like the front of a Cadillac. Originally bright pink, sadly now it's more of an off-white, but this is just such an awesome building. I love all those glass bricks they use for headlights. Such a rad design. Another thing at Corbin and Ventura, if you've ever seen the movie Night at the Roxbury, there's a scene where they're driving around in the limo and they stop to get a bunch of cans of whipped cream. That was right here at this 7-Eleven. Ventura Boulevard and Winnetka, this is Taft High School. You might have seen it in the Brady Bunch movie. They turned this into Greg and Marsha's school. But in real life, this is where Ice Cube went to high school. He was bussed here every day from South Central Los Angeles. Right over there, that's where Greg and Marsha see their friend Eddie trying to steal the car, and they try and get a ride with him. Victory and Fallbrook, this was the Fallbrook Mall. I was never really into this place. It was a single-story mall and just didn't have a great vibe. Now it's called Fallbrook Center, and it's really just a bunch of individual stores. Although I didn't like this mall, I did come here every so often because I had friends that lived in this area. And when I was about 13 years old, I convinced my dad to take me to get my ear pierced. And this was the mall that we came to. Great childhood memory, coming to the mall with your dad to get your ear pierced. And I think I went to like a Claire's Boutique or something. Jeez. The only time that I ever went to a circus as a kid was here in the back parking lot of the Fallbrook Mall. It was Circus Vargas and it was terrible. Circus Vargas, see Circus Vargas. Topanga and Victory, this is the Westfield Topanga. Used to just be known as the Topanga Mall or Topanga Plaza. Westfield bought it out and just made it more of a fancy high-end mall. I remember coming here back in the 80s when it still had an ice skating rink where the food court is. Used to be a pretty cool mall. I hung out here quite a bit back in the day. It's still a nice mall, it's just completely different. Right across the street from the Topanga Plaza, on the corner of Victory and Topanga. It's a big shopping center, another one owned by Westfield called the Village. But this used to be a big parking lot with the Topanga movie theater in it. In the 90s, all the punk rock kids in the valley would come here to do the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I wasn't really a fan. I came here a couple of times just to hang out with my friends. Wasn't really my thing though. This row of apartment buildings at Victory and Tampa was one of the many places that I lived as a kid. Right next door is this medical center. We used to come over here and bring our launch ramp. We used to spend hours every day back here in this alley skateboarding. I don't know what the hell Riverbridge Community is. When I was a kid, this didn't have a name. It was just a bunch of apartment buildings. At the front of the building, we used to also skate this hill all the time. God, it looked a lot bigger when we were kids. Should I? Just a couple of blocks from the apartment building I just showed you, this was my second elementary school, Alden Elementary. Every morning my mom would pull up right here and drop me off for school. That second bungalow on the left, that was my 3rd grade class with Mr. Upshaw. A lot of memories out here on this playground. So if you're watching this and you went to Van Alden Elementary in the late 80s, leave me a comment. We might have went to school together. And Mr. Upshaw, if you're watching this, why did you throw my markers across the classroom? What was wrong with you? Riverside and Woodman, the Sherman Oaks Fashion Square in Sherman Oaks. Now the Westfield Fashion Square, another mall that Westfield took over. I never hung out at this mall. I came here maybe once or twice and didn't like it at all. I don't know anyone that hung out at this mall. I feel like in the 80s and 90s there was like a mall culture, and a mall was either cool or it wasn't. And malls like the Sherman Oaks Fashion Square and the Fallbrook Mall, I guess those were more for adults. And you know, all the kids hung out at the Sherman Oaks Galleria and the Northridge Mall. I don't know, am I wrong? Did you hang out at the Sherman Oaks Fashion Square? Okay, so these are all brand new. When I was growing up, this was a shopping center. There was a movie theater. There was a really cool old school diner called the Hudson Diner. And then there was Magic Emporium. It was hands down the coolest magic and costume shop in the San Fernando Valley. It was basically a magic shop the size of a department store. It was such a cool place. I don't know what happened to it, and I'm really shocked that I can't find anything about it on the internet. Now, they closed down Magic Emporium, they closed down the Hudson Diner. The only thing that survived was the movie theater. When that closed down, it was bought out by some people and turned into a haunted house. They did a haunted house around Halloween time, and then the rest of the year they had punk rock shows there. That place was really awesome and we definitely took it for granted. Sadly, that was eventually torn down, and then now this is what we have. The only thing that still remains from that shopping center, there's one thing that wasn't torn down, and it's this McDonald's right here. I guess McDonald's is the only thing that you can't get rid of. Northridge and Tampa, this is the Northridge Mall. I hung out here a lot in the 90s. I spent a lot of time here just walking around, hanging out, checking out girls, but never talking to them. I saw the movie Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves here. Took glamour shot pictures here with my wife while we were still dating. In the early 90s, this was still a really cool mall. It still had carpet and just had that general 80s feel to it. But then they had to rebuild a bunch of the mall, and they just ended up remodeling the whole thing. They gave it a more updated, modern vibe. But even after that, we pretty much hung out here just about every day of the week. This was definitely my go-to mall after the Sherman Oaks Galleria was torn down.